Tolakaran, friends and foes. Welcome to the 8th faction preview video for DCI Last Alliance. I am Ngugi, team leader, and on behalf of the team I shall present you the Men of the Mountains. The faction leader is King Sarasir, and their main population is mountain men. The faction's strength lies in a variety of infantry units, while their weakness is a lack of early heavy units and limited cavalry. A long quest is to hold 30 regions, the short quest is to hold 20 regions. Neither quest includes to see another faction dead, because of the special condition of freedom that the Men of the Mountains has. We will get back to this in detail in the strategy map section of this video. First, however, who were the Men of the Mountains? Most of you will only know them as the Grey Host, not green for the record, the undead army that Aragorn calls upon in Return of the King. In origin, they belonged to the same kindred of people that is better known as Rohan, and who also settled in Enedwaith and all the way up to Bree. This makes the Men of the White Mountains the kinsmen of the people in Bree, in Enedwaith, of the Dunlendings, and of the natives in Gondor. A vanguard group among the kindred, known as the Haladin, at the end of the First Age came all the way into Beleriand. The Haladin fought against Morgoth together with the elves and became one of the 3 forefather groups to the Dunedain on the island of Numenor. The Men of the Mountains therefore are like the cousins of the Dunedain, but no one understood this because their languages were unrelated. Now, back to the early Second Age, Sauron arose as the new Dark Lord, and his shadow fell over Middle-earth, including the folks around the White Mountains. They held him as their god. We might guess the mountain men fought for Sauron in his wars, but at the end of the Second Age his grip on them waned. Most likely the split came about after the year 3261, when King Ar-Pharazôn of Numenor sailed to Middle-earth in force and took his rival Sauron as captive. This was a plot of Sauron's, and for 58 years he was on Numenor, where he gave the already mostly corrupted Numenorians a nudge out of the door into shameless evil. But over those 58 years he naturally lost control over much lands and peoples in Middle-earth, including our Highlanders. Even more years passed before he could regain his vast tyranny again, because his body was destroyed at the time Numenor sank in 3319. And his spirit went back to Mordor, and he did not make himself known to the world for many years afterwards, until he had brought a new terrible form for himself. So, when Numenor sank under the sea, those who survived were led by Elendil, and they fled to Middle-earth. His sons, Isildur and Anarion, ended up in the south, where faithful Numenorians had settled for a long time already. They welcomed the two lords, making them their kings and calling their new realm Gondor. At the early stage of Gondor's history, the Men of the Mountains were clearly not yet friends of the Dunedain, because the fortress of Minas Anor, that in the Third Age was renamed into Minas Tirith, was constructed specifically to be, quote, a shield against the wild men of the Dales, unquote. But with the growing might of the Dunedain next door, and the apparent weakness of Sauron, if not absence of Sauron, meant that the Mountain Kingdom must have grown keen on holding a good relationship with Gondor. At some unknown point during the 110 years between 3319 and 3429, Isildur and the King of the Mountains met by the Black Stone of Erech, and there the King of the Mountains swore allegiance to Isildur. This is the situation when DCI's campaign begins. So let us move on to the campaign and experience the freedom of choice as the Men of the Mountains. And welcome to the strategy map. We are per usual greeted first with the welcoming message with a reference to the faction information scroll that we will have reasons to return to quite soon. Then we have the options of the Balrog and or Immortal Nazgul. I as usual say that activate them or deactivate them depending on the challenge you want to experience, as well as of course lore concerns. In this case I simply press accept in order to move on, and so we will meet the first special feature of the Men of the Mountains. The Crossroads of Doom is a reference of the allegiance that the Men of the Mountains have sworn to Isildur, but how they have not forgotten Sauron in their heart, and that under this line here of symbols we are given technical information. The Men of the Mountains can switch culture to hosts of the West, that is the Alliance culture, or followers of Sauron, that is of course the evil culture. See the faction information scroll for details. It may be viewed in any time in-game via the Shift F1 shortcuts. Before we move on to that, let me underline that this is a unique Men of the Mountain features. They are the only ones who can change culture in game. No other faction can change culture in game. And I should perhaps, even before we are checking out the information in the scroll, mention that if you are playing as any other faction than the Men of the Mountains in a campaign, you do not know what side the Men of the Mountains will take. They start out as middlemen, as we can see if you are checking here. Settlement. They are starting out as middlemen, that is, shall we say, a neutral traditional culture of their own. But if they but during a campaign they will change either to good or evil, and if you're playing as any other faction than the Men of the Mountains, you do not know what side they will take. So being positioned here in the middle of the map, they are a wild card that can have great effect on how will the events unfold in the War of the Last Alliance. There are, however, shall be noted, the chance that for Mordor, if you are playing as Mordor, you will encounter events that will give you the options to try to influence the Men of the Mountains to join the evil side. And if you are playing as the Numenorean kingdoms, here in black we see both Anor and Gondor, but especially your Gondor province will be concerned about that, if we say so. If you're playing as the Numenorean kingdoms, you will also be able through different actions to affect the Men of the Mountains to take your side, but only as the Men of the Mountains yourself. If you play them, you can be sure what side they will take during a game. So they can be quite unnerving if you're playing, say, the wild men of Enedwite, they might be a bit worried what side will they take. If you're playing the Lothlorien or Mordor, or especially the Númenórean kingdoms, you will be worried, will they join the other side and become an enemy that you had not prepared for. This unnerving side of the Men of the Mountains is a fun aspect, I can tell. I think that last time I played a campaign as the Númenórean kingdoms, I kind of prayed every turn that they would not betray me, and how that turned out I will not tell here, but it was thrilling. So let's press Shift F1 as noted and check the faction information scroll, and we are here informed that this faction has the ability to change its culture. Starting out as middlemen, it may switch to either hosts of the West or followers of Sauron any number of times, but never back to middlemen. Meaning that you start as middlemen and you can change to the good culture or the evil culture, and you can then keep jumping between good and evil how many times you want to, but you can never go back to middlemen. So if you want to play as a neutral what should you say, a neutral faction. Fuck it. And here we have the faction information scroll, and we read that this faction has the ability to change its culture. Starting out as middlemen, it may switch to either hosts of the West or followers of Sauron any number of times, but never back to middlemen. Meaning that you start as middlemen, you may choose to become evil or choose to become good, and then you can jump between good and evil how many times you want to during a campaign, but you may never return back to middlemen. So if you want to play on your own terms, being neutral, being traditional, do never become either good or evil. And we are then given some references to the buildings that decide what culture you have. The cultural monuments buildings increases middleman culture levels, and I will show you those in a short moment. To change culture to host of the West, the good ones, the good culture, build cultural institution buildings in all settlements that you may, and then use the change culture shortcut Alt-M. Likewise, for followers of Sauron, build shrines of Sauron in all settlements that you may. Note that culture building, institution, and shrines and monuments must be destroyed in a settlement before a different type can be built there. And by this we mean that, say that we are capturing, we want to play evil, and we have captured Minas Anor, and Minas Anor has a good conversion building. We must destroy it manually, because for the Men of the Mountains, we are informed about this one there. When middlemen, as we are starting out as, institution buildings might not be auto-destroyed when captured from the Númenóreans. So as long as we are still middlemen, as we start out as, and if we capture a settlement that has a conversion building to hosts of the West from the Númenóreans, that building will not be auto-destroyed, or might not be auto-destroyed, so we might have to do that first. Now let's have a look at the buildings in question, and we are having, in difference to all other factions, 3 options as we stand. If we are intending to remain neutral and walking our own path, we can build the cultural monuments. And here we have the Halabor, and they are giving the same conversion bonuses. However, of course, these monuments are giving middlemen culture. So we have the Halabor, the Talbor, and the Angbor, increasing the conversion rate. If we are intending instead to make our settlements good, and we want to play good, we choose the cultural institutions, then we build a library, a school, or a university in order to convert into hosts of the West. And lastly, if we want to go evil, we build the Shrines of Sauron buildings, Shrine of Sauron, Temple of Sauron, and or the Great Temple of Sauron. Now, if we in a settlement choose to say that we want to go the evil route, and we choose to build a Shrine of Sauron, the other two options are removed. So you can only have one of these three buildings in a settlement when you construct them yourself. Note that if there were a library there already, because they captured the settlement, if it was a Dunedain settlement earlier, this building might be there already and has to be destroyed first. But if there is no conversion building in the settlement and we want to build one of these three trees, we begin, and the other two are removed. The same if, say, we want to build a library, then the other two are removed. So there's should be no great risk of you getting a problem here. But we shall show you an example of how to go ahead with your conversion into another culture. And since we are a nasty bunch, I like to imagine the Dunedain as the good, Mordor as the evil, and these men of the mountain as the ugly, a la the 1966 The Good, the Bad and the Ugly movie. We shall show you how this works out if we are going evil. So if we are looking back to the information again, we are informed that we must build Shrines of Sauron in all settlements that we may. Usually you will start out the campaign expanding, trying to grab as many rebel settlement as you may before you before the AI can take them, of course. So that may presumably delay the time before you will change either way, unless of course you're happy with staying as middleman, then it won't matter. But if you have captured more settlements, of course there will be more settlements that you will have to build conversion buildings in, and it must also be the highest level of conversion building in that possible settlement. Now, as I won't bother with expanding, we will simply build in Tirith Onodlo and the capital of Dunharov the evil conversion building. And so we're back. Now I noted that of course I have to build a second level also at Tirith Onodlo, because a large town can also build a second level. So, but we have now a Temple of Sauron in both our settlement that can construct so-called Shrine of Sauron. So with the largest level of conversion building of same kind in all of our settlement that can build them, we now see that we must push the change culture shortcut Alt M. So I do that, I press Alt and M, and now we have no message image here. I will have to provide that, but become Oathbreakers we are offered here because we have built the evil buildings in both our settlements. And we are now giving a little flower text here about what do this entail, and the technical information as usual under the line. Do you wish to change to the followers of Sauron culture now? Of course we want to join with Sauron. It would be wise, my friend. And boom, we are now Oathbreakers. And we are given some information. The scrolls like this are given also to you if you are playing as another faction, and if the men of the mountains choose to take the evil path. This will break the alliance with the Númenórean kingdoms. However, it will not start war at once. As we can see now, we have no enemies and no allies. We are given information also in the information scroll about what does it mean to join either side. If we are joining the hosts of the West, the evil faction will dislike you. We may join and at a later stage even call the Tolakarns. Those are the counter invasions. We can be targeted for invasions by the evil faction, but we will be also granted a bonus unit, the Tarkil Archers, a Númenórean style unit to recruit. If we, as we did now, choose to join the followers of Sauron, the good factions of course will dislike us. Sauron is your supreme master. To remain under his protection you must abide by his commands, simply meaning he has not appeared yet, but it is the usual Pope system where when Sauron is in play as the Dark Lord, aka a Pope, you must stay on his good side in order to not become excommunicated. Since you're an evil faction, you can join and request invasions. You can be targeted by Tolakarns. Thus they can send a counter invasion against you, and you are granted a unique unit that is known as the Renegades of the Eye, a Mordor style infantry unit. While as middlemen you can you have the good and evil factions have no particular dislike of you, meaning that they will none of the sides will like you, but they will not dislike you, such as they dislike each other. You can be targeted for invasions, however you will not be targeted for counter invasions. The Tolakarns will not be called upon you if you remain as middlemen. And also here it is not noted, but there is a special pikeman unit that will be available for you if you choose to remain as middlemen, and also as our beta tester Raptor, Philosopher noted, it is a unit available in the traditional homelands of Enedvite. Those are your cousins if you are middlemen still, and if you liberate, might we call it, Enedvite, you will have the possibility to lay your hands on a special unit there as well. We will not show that in this preview because that is a little surprise for those who choose to play middlemen. Now, with all of this shown to you, and we hope you're really looking forward to be free to play as the oath-breaking evil men of the mountains, or the oath-keeping good men of the mountains, or simply the middlemen who are a bit deviant and enjoy playing as they prefer themselves. You can be given some pointers here about what strategic effect will it have on your campaign. And I could begin with saying that playing as an evil man of the mountains is presumably the easiest of the options. You will have these two targets, of course, Isengard and Helm's Deep. These are two large military settlements that will be targets for you if you choose to be evil, and you will, using them, have a good recruitment base that might not otherwise be open for you. So I would argue that together with your friends in Mordor and in Harad that you will gain, while having your west front hopefully protected by the Ened Wildmen, would make playing Men of the Mountains as evil the easiest choice. The Dunedain are no pushovers, of course, and you will get Tolakans against you presumably, but still it may be the easier of the options to join with Sauron. Then I would say that if you choose to play as a good faction, if you are Oathkeepers, you will spend a lot of your time going against Mordor. Since, however, and against Ened White will be quite easy picking if at least Lindon and the Arnor part of the Numenorean kingdoms have done their job. So you will have two fronts, both in the west and in the east, but it should be possible to manage that with the south and north held by friends. And if you choose to play middle men, that's meaning being neutral, it is of course your wild card totally. Will you choose? You can attack Mordor and the evil factions playing neutral. You can attack the good factions playing neutral, and of course both sides will be as willing to attack you too, meaning that you might have the hardest, either the easiest or the hardest experience playing as middlemen. But if we take again our beta tester Velociraptor, from his experience when he played as middleman in the neutral manner, he ended up fighting with everyone. So do not underestimate the experience as a neutral faction either. Let's have a look then at our generals and leaders. The Men of the Mountains are having a family tree. So it is starting with King Sarasir, who is beginning in the capital of Dunharov. King Sarasir is having the ancillaries King of Dunharov, granting authority and morale, as well as Master of the Armory, granting a hit point and some authority. He is having a biography, granting 5 hit points and other bonuses. He has the special ability Word of Honor that increases combat effectiveness and locks morale. He is of course faction leader, and he has the edgy around Mordor trait, meaning that he do not want to fight Mordor if it comes to that. Meanwhile, his son is Saragamba, who starts inside Tirith Onodlo, but I moved him out here. He is Commandant of the White Mountains, granting +2 command and 1 authority. He is having a Shield Maiden ancillary, granting +1 for his infantry units, and also the next air ancillary. He is having a special ability known as Savage Legacy that increases combat effectiveness and decreases fatigue and rallies routing troops. He has the House of Sarasir trait, meaning that he grants he's granted some extra authority, and all male descendants of his gets it as well. That way we can follow if any generals that you get in the future are direct heirs in the same line of King Sarasir. And finally we can note that he is wary of Dunedain. Finally we have the gentleman of Tamar, who starts here on the border towards Kalenardon. Conceptually we have made it so that all the infantry, the foot soldier units you have are men of the mountains themselves, while the cavalry they field are their cousins from the plains of Kalenardon. So they are described as being not men from the mountains, the cavalry, but from Kalenardon instead. And they are relatives with each other, just in the manner that the men of the mountains are relatives with the Dunlendings, for example. Tamar is thus having a trait that means he is of Kalenardon, and he comes from the nobility there. He has the +1 cash gained from looting trait from that, and if he get males, like we see Tal Tamar here for example, Tal Tamar will also inherit this of Kalenardon trait, but Tamar here has also the spoils of war special ability in the battlefield, slightly increases combat effectiveness and locks morale. He is likewise edgy around Mordor, so he don't prefer to fight them, but to his advantage he has a mounted bodyguard, and we shall jump in and have a look at those now. And here the weather is a bit gloomy, but hope that you will see well enough nonetheless. In the first line we have Tamar's Kalenardon bodyguard, who, as we will see later, are the same as the heavy cavalry unit that we have available in the roster. They are having an attack of 6, charge bonus of 8, with a total defense of 21, out of which 9 is armor. But here we can mainly have a closer look at our the general model, as all the units are made by Earl of Memory, who have our gratitude for this splendid host. See here if we can have him a bit up. You can see he is having this special kind of helmet with protection on the side of the front, and this general model will be seen quite a lot on the battlefields. However, if we move back to and these footmen are the normal bodyguard of the men of the mountains. They are sturdy swordsmen with 11 attack, 5 charge, 23 total defense, out of which also 9 is armor. But here we have the the prince himself. I will add a link in the description to the much better and closer up preview of the models as we have taken before. Exoli Crusader took some swell screenshots, but we can see here there are a lot more decorations on the helmets, and also we can see the body outfit. These are based on the models, or rather the photos and drawings and such that's provided by Beta Workshop. And finally we have the king himself, as you might recognize from the undead king in the film. He has this special helmet with snake-like beasts on the side, also very well decorated helmet, and a shield to go in the same style, and overall fancy clothing to prove that he is the king and he is out to cause some havoc. His special ability is of course Word of Honor. It is a bit of an ironic touch there. Same kind of shield is, or a like shield is held by Saragamba the Heir. His Savage Legacy has this emblem, as you might recall from, I think it's Room 1 that has it in Origin, while Tamar's Spoils of War has this treasure chest to make you in the right mood and spirit. So with these gentlemen shown, and again check the link to the preview, the screenshot preview in the description, and we shall move on to the battlefield and look on the roster. And welcome to the battle map. First in line we have our initial infantry units. The first generic one is the Ridge Militia, who are basic spearmen, thus having a bonus fighting cavalry. Since they only have 3 attack, there will be especially useful just fighting cavalry, otherwise they won't do that much damage. Their total defense is 7 with 0 armor, however, so they must rely on their shield and parry value of 5. This makes them able to handle attacks from the front well enough. They are having larger shields, again units by Earl of Memory, and their large shields make them able to take attacks from the front, but they should avoid attacks in you should make sure that their backs and sides are safe. They are however quite cheap, so you will be able to field a few of them. Make them frontline units, and don't mind if they pass away. I think you will be deviant enough to be able to handle that sacrifice. The Mountaineers, they are expert at hiding in woods, which that is a bit unique for them. They will have an easier time making an ambush thus. Their melee attack is only 2, but they are even worse than the militia. However, their melee weapon is a small axe, so they have armor piercing in melee, making them able to handle armored enemies a bit better than your normal militia can do. Also, they have a javelin that they throw at their enemies before engaging melee, granting them an ability to reduce the hostile numbers before actually having to engage them, making them quite useful. Missile attack thus of 6. Otherwise the defense is the same, 7 total, and only and 5 in shield and parry, so attack engaged enemy directly face to face. The upgrade from them are our first quite eye-catching unit. We should again be said have used inspiration from the Veta, both clothings and patterns, and also from historical sources. We like to imagine antiquity and dark ages and such as all grey and muddy and boring, but people have always enjoyed to put on some color, both to feel more important themselves, but also to make the enemy a bit more careful, because an enemy who do not try to hide himself is probably quite confident. Now, being spearmen, the Ridge Keepers can form the Tangail, that is the Skiltrom formation from Medieval 2. They can fight, they have a bonus fighting cavalry, of course, being spearmen. They have attack of 4, charge bonus of 5, total defense of 12 with 5 armor, so they're quite capable defensive units. They can hold the line engaging the enemy while better attacking infantry do their part. Note that as most units, they are most available in mountains. The mountaineers, should be noted, have the difference that they requires mountains. So the mountaineers are only available in mountain regions. You cannot recruit them in forest or grasslands or deserts. But these other units are simply most available in mountains, less so in, say, grasslands or forests. Next to the Ridge Keepers is the Mountain Infantry. These swordsmen have an attack of 5 with a charge bonus of 4, total defense of 12, armor 5. These are thus a medium infantry unit. Also, being swordsmen, they are efficient against other infantry as a base rule. Then we have our missile units. We have the Highland Bowmen, and these gentlemen are having a missile attack of 4. They're being quite untrained, but still they are still huntsmen. They have an acceptable accuracy, but the range is not very good. They should avoid melee because they only have 1 attack. However, they are having small axes, so they have armor piercing, but again only 1 attack. So together with only 3 in defense, that in defense skill keep them away from a close combat fighting, if you may. Upgrading into the Vale Archers, these gentlemen are having better bows, so they have better range, they have better accuracy, and they have a missile attack of 5. In melee they have an attack of 4, but no armor piercing. However, a total defense of 7 with 4 armor. Then we reach our elite top infantry line. We have the Sworn Nobles, who can make a shield wall. They have an attack of 8 with a charge bonus of 5, total defense of 17 with 7 armor. They are thus capable at fighting heavy infantry or units from other factions. However, they are not top of the line compared to other rosters. They are still, if you have chosen when and where to fight as a smart commander, these guys will allow you to turn the tide of battles. Not to say anything less about the Sworn Fighters. These are heavy axemen with who are of course, being axemen, effective against armor. So with 7 attack, 5 charge bonus and armor piercing, they can wreak havoc on a battlefield. They have a total defense of 16, 7 armor, but also 7 in shield and parry. So they are very good at taking enemies on face to face. However, be a bit careful about enemy, and it comes for both these guys who have a very low defense skill, who are relying on their armor. Be careful to have them fighting enemy units with armor piercing themselves. Our cavalry line, the first and most common cavalry unit that you will field are the Calenardon skirmishers. These light cavalry units are having javelins that they throw at their foes. They are most available in grasslands, as all cavalry units are. They have 7 missile attacks, so they can decimate the enemy before they reach your lines. A melee attack of 1 only, however, just as with our bowmen, Highland Bowmen, this 1 is backed up by armor piercing ability, since this 1 is from a small axe, but preferably they should engage engage melee when the enemy is occupied fighting another unit already, or when hunting down fleeing enemies. They have a total defense of 7 with only 1 armor, so beware, they are weak against missile fire. Then we have the units Calenardon Brigands, who are only available in Calenardon. For you, they are usually otherwise a mercenary units, and they require Calenardon regions here, as said, so they are AOR unit. They have attack of 3, charge bonus of 9, so they are, you want to cycle charge with them, especially considering they have a total defense of 12 with 5 armor, so they should not, as any cavalry really, they should never stay in melee for long, but cycle charge, attack, back out, attack again. And then we have the heavy infantry, as we saw before with the Tamar's bodyguard. We have the Calenardon nobles, who have of course good morale, powerful charge. They have an attack of 5 with a charge bonus of 8 and a total defense of 19, 9 armor out of that. So they can handle some prolonged melee engagement, but again, with these gentlemen, try to cycle charge with them. Now we reach the backline, and these units are the bonus units that you will get from choosing a side. If you choose to be neutral and remain by your own cultural, you choose your own cultural way, you get the Danaerg Wardens. Danaerg refers to Dunharov. They are pikemen, or long spearmen as we call it in game. They can form a spear wall using their special ability, and of course having a great bonus fighting cavalry. They are having an attack of 4 and a charge bonus of 3. Of course, in having a spear wall formation, they won't charge very much, but the quite low attack value is of course balanced up by the fact that if they're using their formation, they will have many chances to attack the enemy who are kept at bay. Therefore also their low defense value of 5 armor, 3 defense and 0 shield and parry. And then we are looking at the renegades of the eye, who are infantry who get bonus fighting cavalry. However, they have a total defense of 20 with 9 armor, so these guys can take quite some beating on the battlefield. And finally, if you choose to play as Host of the West, you will be allowed to get the Tarkil archers. The Tarkil, the word Tarkil is Westron for someone who is like Dunedain, more or less. So these gentlemen are mountain men, but they are given the outfits from the Dunedain in the Numenorean kingdoms. So they are wielding an armor, as you can see, and they are given also the steel bows of the Numenorians. They have an attack of 5 in missile attack, but that it's also effective against armor. The range is that of a normal bow, not that of a long bow, but they compensate this with armor piercing. So you want to send these guys, set these guys to fire at heavily armored enemies. In melee they have an attack of 6, so they can handle their own, and with a total defense of 19 against, they can handle both a shootout and a melee confrontation. They are, of course, as noted with all of these, they requires the culture host of the West. And back at the end we are looking at the bodyguard again, but I simply brought it up so here we can see a captain, how he look. As we see, of course also we have our bannermen. The bannermen are, this is should we say a high quality bannerman for the better units. They are having actual cloth with a lot of decorations, while if you look at the simple bannermen, they are just having a staff with a carved wooden emblem. This is in accordance to their cultural background. when we were looking at their cousins, the wild men of Enedwhite, they too only had a staff with a carved animal upon. So we thank you very much for staying with us throughout this presentation, and we hope you feel that you will have a lot of fun options fighting as the Men of the Mountains.